Question: why was the US State Department funding anti-authoritarian tech training across the Arab world just before the uprisings, the Arab Spring, began? The US State Department invested in digital democracy programs to train activists on online organizing, comms like this, and counter-censorship. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are American platforms, and they played a huge role in mobilizing the Arab Spring. NGOs like USAID, National Endowment for Democracy, and the Open Society Foundation fund civil society, democratic media, and pro-democracy initiatives, whatever that means. Most of the youth grassroots movements that started the Arab Spring received their training and their funding and the digital tools from these US NGOs. Leaked US cables prove that Washington had been funding these youth groups years before the Arab Spring. This is a well-known tactic of the West. Go in under the guise of democracy and astroturf local resistance against leaders that they don't like. It's not because they suddenly cared about Arab democracy. It's about removing inconvenient leaders, topple regimes that are resisting the West, and install approved elites that will cooperate. Don't forget that spreading democracy has always been a mask for reshaping regions to serve foreign capital. It's the globalists again. But these protesters wanted reform, not foreign bombs. The dispossession of Libya was part of a broader global reset, an imperial reset on the global south. Libya wasn't perfect under Gaddafi, no state is. Like, they hadn't had elections in 40 years. It still was authoritarian in some degrees. Dissidents or people who spoke out against the state would be jailed. And according to the West, there were reports of torture. But he seemed to have prioritized certain tribes over others. And so, because tribes like the Benghazi felt marginalized in Libyan society, the West was able to capitalize on that resentment. They love an old divide and conquer situation. The Arab Spring started in Egypt and made its way through from Tunisia, then Libya. It was youth challenging the status quo, which is a very common thing for global youths to want to do. But they were highly misinformed, is the problem. This was not an organic resistance. It was American interference, the dangers of social media. And the protesters wanted political reform, not a full regime change. They were peaceful and they wanted additions to their government. They wanted to add a constitution. They wanted to enhance their freedom of speech and end corruption. And the West media machine kicked in almost immediately, and it rapidly shifted from protest to Gaddafi is massacring his people. Western intelligence saw a chance to act. NATO was able to frame itself as the saviors of this humanitarian crisis and prepare for intervention. These people were not asking for Gaddafi's removal, they were just looking for a fairer system. But their struggle was hijacked by outside powers who used it as a pretext to dismantle the Libyan state. Part 3, I'm going to talk about Western propaganda around all of this, how NATO actually got involved, because it's called manufacturing consent. And they still do it, so you really need to be aware of the terminology. Massacre is an intense word. You should not be throwing that around the mainstream headlines lightly. There's a duty of care being ignored by the West. It's not a free or fair democracy if you've lied to all the people.